Good evening, all of you. Welcome to Read On Children's Literature Festival Season 2, Panel Discussion 1. The topic for the panel discussion this evening is Children's Literature in India versus Children's Literature across the globe. Literature always has been a fascinating piece of work, documented across the sands of time by many passionate people who have had a soul connect with what has been happening around them. Various forms of works in literature have been written, right from poems to stories to epics. Some of them have even gone into the extent of writing mythological works. Literature has always been a work of passion, a work of art. But somewhere down the line, literature lost its sheen, beg your pardon, lost its sheen because it started becoming a mere subject in schools. The way it was taught was just for the answers in a question paper without actually dwelling into the fact as to why that wonderful piece of work was orchestrated so well by the author. Read On Children's Literature Festival is an attempt by Alchemy Arts and Education Foundation to take children back to that love, to that passion with which the art has to be seen, experienced, and explored. We have two wonderful panelists today who are our guest panelists, Shalini and Sudha. In a while from now, I would be requesting Mahalakshmi to kindly introduce our guest panelists. Apart from that, we also have our Alchemy student panelists who will also be talking and discussing with our guest panelists today. Over to you, Mahalakshmi, for the introduction of our guest panelists.
Thank you. It gives me immense pleasure in introducing our panelists for the evening. Firstly, we have Dr. Shalini Srinivasan. Dr. Shalini writes for children and adults. She worked at Amar Chitra Katha previously and wrote several comics, including biographies, Tenzing Norgay, Salim Ali, and folk tales, Heroes of Hampi. She holds a PhD from the University of Hyderabad, and her research is on comics too. Shalini's book for children include Vanamala, the cephalopod, which was included on the White Ravens list and shortlisted for the Crossword Children's Award, Gangamma Ghariyal, and more recently, the picture books Shoe Cat, Poo Cat, and The Case of the Missing Water. She teaches English and writing at Azim Premji University, Bangalore. Welcome, ma'am, and thank you for agreeing to be a part of Read On Festival Season 2. Next, we go to our second panelist, Ms. Sudha Venkatachari. She has been working as a librarian for the past 20 years. She started her career with SNDT University Library and moved on to Vivekananda Educational Society College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Mumbai, where she became the head librarian. She has also had a brief stint with Middle East and Delhi. For the past 11 years, she has been working as a librarian in Vidya Mandir School, Chennai. On the extracurricular front, she has been a yoga teacher and still practices yoga. She has also been a part of Bharat Scouts and Guides and at school levels and part of National Social Services at college. Some of her other hobbies include listening to music, playing badminton, gardening, traveling. She has graduated in economics from Roya College and completed MA in sociology and master's in library and information science from SNDT University. Thank you, ma'am, for agreeing to be a part of this panel discussion. I welcome you both.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, both of you. And beg your pardon, all of you again. The introduction was done by Swati M. Kumar and not by Mahalakshmi. The initial order was Mahalakshmi was going to do the introduction. So we had a switch over at the last minute, and human mind sometimes doesn't remember all these switches as it happens. So here we are. The panel discussion is about to roll out. And dear audience who are all watching us live on YouTube, you get to participate in this too. You're not going to be passive. So if you have questions for our panelists, kindly do drop in the questions into the chat box in the YouTube, and we will take it up with our panelists and see if we can answer your questions. Now, before we roll it out, today's discussion might not find a solution to what we are embarking on, but it could definitely trigger an inspiring thought into many minds. So with this, I drop my first question to Shalini, where I would request you to give us a small opening talk on children's literature in India versus children's literature across the globe from your experience of what you have been doing, and request the guest panelists that for each question, try to let us keep the answering time to 2 minutes so that we have many questions that can be rolled out, because we are running on a time frame of 60 minutes to complete this discussion. So I request Shalini to kindly join in and go in with your answer.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I mean, in some ways, this is a hard question to answer for me, because I mostly publish in India, in the Indian publishing context. And I think one of the major differences, of course, is that the Indian publishing industry itself, in terms of writers, in terms of readers, in terms of publishing houses, is much smaller. I think that's partly one of the reasons why there's a distinct difference that you can tell between in the books, which is that it is a smaller publishing industry, particularly in English, and I write in English. It's a relatively small sort of group of people who produce these books, write these books, and read them. In India, because we have so many languages, we have each language tends to have its own little publishing book related industry, right? So if you read in Tamil, there's a sort of that the writers, the readership, all of that is sort of separate. If you read in Kannada, that's separate, and so on. So in that sense, it's actually very hard to talk about children's literature in India, because what we really have is lots of different kinds of children's literatures in lots of different languages. So, yeah.
Right. Lovely. And thank you so much for this answer. I see a guest coming up on our Zoom call now, Ms. Shobha Raman. I guess Shobha Raman, the principal of Vidya Mandir School. Yes. I would request Sudha ma'am to inform Shobha Raman ma'am to come through the YouTube, because here we have only the panelists and the students talking. So all the guests are invited to our YouTube channel. So
yeah, I'll just switch off my video. I'll just call her up.
Sure.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Sure. So now as we go forward, that was a wonderful introduction by Shalini, where she mentioned very clearly that in India, the English writing is a smaller industry. The English Indian authors, is a smaller industry. And all the regional languages do have their small pockets of publishing as it goes through. So could be related to the diversity that we have in language in India, which could also be a reason why we might not have too many English Indian authors and children's literature work coming up. As we wait for Sudha to come in, let us move on to one of our contenders, young contenders here, the young student panelist, I would call them. Really happy to see such young students coming up for such heavy discussions. as heavy as literature. So let me start with Ananya J. Ananya J, if you have a question to direct to Shalini, I will request you to go in for that question now.
Hi. My question is, which type of literature from the two do you think is better, and which one do you think children might like more?
Okay, that's another really tough question. I'm going to answer the first one first, which is which one. I actually read both, so I don't really like either better because I read a lot of children's literature in both that published in India and that published abroad. So, and I mean I like my books to be different from each other. So I like reading different kinds of books from different parts of the world. So I mean I can't really vote for one or the other here. For the second as well, I think, I mean, again, I think it depends on the child, right? Because reading is such a, I mean, for, I don't know about you, what kind of books do you like to read, Ananya?
I like to read non-fiction books, like from around the world. And I also like to read from India. So.
Exactly, right? So I think we all like many different kinds of books, right? So I think it's hard to say that one is better than the other. They are different because they're being written by people who live very different lives. But yeah, I mean, that's not a real answer, sorry, but it's true.
Right. Okay. So thank you so much for that. We do understand, you know, that which is why we picked up this particular topic to discuss, because it doesn't have a finite boundary. You really cannot tie it down with a finite boundary. I would request the tech team, you know, to keep us on a gallery view for some time, because I guess we are also moving across different boxes as we are talking. But before we go on to the gallery view, the next question is going out to Sudha, because we didn't get the introductory opening statement from Sudha. So coming back to you, Sudha, for the introductory statement, we just bought some time as you went to speak to Shobha Raman and come back. So Sudha, the same question to you. What do you think is the difference between the Indian children literature scene and the children's literature from across the globe as a librarian? Because you've had vast experience in handling libraries. So you would be the best authority to know in terms of which were the books which were, you know, touched upon more, picked up upon more, subscribed by students, and over the period of time, because 20 years is a long time as a librarian. So how has the mood shifted in the children, and what are the kind of books that they like to pick up and read more? Over to you, Sudha.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I would like to add on what Shalini has said, that India being a multilingual and multicultural country, there are so many variety of books, and children have a wide range to explore. But unfortunately, what has happened or still happening is because our medium of instruction is English. So most of the books being published are in English. And because our education system somewhere down the lane was influenced by the Britishers, all the foreign books published in English, maybe classics or fiction, biographies, they have entered in our market. Secondly, I find that that way of producing a book, the quality of the book, the print, the illustrations, all play a very major role in attracting the children in India. As compared to Indian authors, well, I think the trend has changed from what used to be narrative years back. Today, it is changed. I feel the modern writers and authors writing in English in India, their style of writing is changed. It's not more to do with narrative. Narrative is one part, but they are trying to associate all their real life experiences, and they have been put up in a nice way, in a simple way that the children can read and they can relate to themselves. You can see how Sudha Murthy, Ruskin Bond, all these authors are quite popular among the children. And not only they read once, they do read it again and again. It's more to do with the simplicity of the language and how they can relate in our environment. So I find that Indian books, Indian authors writing in English, this is a very, what should I say? It's a great change from the past to today. As far as the foreign books or other language book goes, I think we all grew up. I mean, at least I and many of us have grown up at the age and era when we had in our school Enid Blyton, we had Nancy Drew, we had Hardy Boys, and we had so many classics. So we have grown up reading those. Those books are really good and worth it. And we still continue to propagate these books to our students even today in schools. So I find that this still continues, but at the same time, the new authors, the new set of authors writing in English for our students can do a lot more and get them into reading those books also.
Thank you, Sudha. Thank you for that lively introduction from there, which is setting the tone quite well to open up the discussion. Let me now move on to our young Yajur. Yajur has been waiting with his questions. Yajur, over to you to ask your question now.
Thank you, sir. Hi, ma'am. I'm going to ask my question, which is, how will children's literature produced worldwide help Indian children's literature?
Who would you want this to direct this question to, please?
I would like Shalini ma'am to answer my question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Yajur. I mean, I think like a lot of other things, right? We live in a global world, right? So just like you guys probably watch films from other parts of the world, like you probably listen to music from other parts of the world. I think with books also, I think it's important to read books from everywhere, right? Because books are one of the ways we get to know how other people are, how they work, what they're thinking about, what are the ideals they have, right? What do they think is interesting? How do they live? So I think in that sense, it's a good thing that we are, and I like Sudha, I'm also someone who grew up reading a lot of books from abroad, right? Because that's what my school library had. And so, but I think in some ways it's a good thing that we're reading books from everywhere, right? It's important. I think one of when I was young, when I was your age, right? I think one of the things my school library had a lot of was it had a lot of these folk tales from Russia, right? And they were beautiful books. I loved them. And I mean, I don't know Russian. I've never been to Russia, but every time I read those stories, I could feel some sort of connection. And I do think it's very important for us all to be able to read books from other parts of the world. I'll also say in the Indian context, I think it's important for us to be able to read books from other parts of the country, right? Because, I mean, I'm guessing you're all in Chennai, I'm in Bangalore. But, you know, when I read books by somebody who's living in Srinagar, it's a new world that book is giving you. So yeah, so I think I mean if you are reading books from other places, I think that's a very good thing for you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and to add what Shalini ma'am has said, yeah, when you read books from different places, you read from abroad, you read Russian books, you read English, Korean, what will happen is you get to know their culture, your creativity gets activated, your imagination grows, and you will develop a different ability to think. And maybe, who knows, you may become a writer tomorrow. All these experiences will help you in growing up, not only in your personality, but also in your thinking, in your writing, and getting to know about other countries and cultures.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah, welcome.
Lovely. So that was a lovely piece of question which triggered wonderful answers. I guess the spotlight needs to be moved parallelly. Whoever is there at the tech front, can we have the spotlight moved? Yeah, thank you so much. So I was coming back to that question, what Yajur had just asked, which triggered a wonderful response. So as we try and travel and see the world, how traveling helps us, how watching different movies helps us, reading books from different parts of the world, and particularly from different parts of our country, really helps us connect with the different kind of cultures and civilization and people that live around us, and it helps us coexist. We will now move on to our next young panelist who's here. Let me move on to Satvik Santosh for his first question. And please, once you ask the question, please direct the question to who you would like that to be answered by. Over to you, Satvik Santosh.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So this question, I am directing it to Shalini, ma'am. I want to ask you, you have had experience in writing books for children, and was it hard to formulate an idea for the story, or was it hard to formulate that idea into a story?
Okay, so well, this is an awkward question because I've written several books, and with some of them it was very, very hard, right? Because I had this sort of small idea and I had to turn it into a book. And my first novel took me 5 years to write, which is very, very slow. And it took me so long because I would write a version and I wouldn't like it, so I delete it and write another version. And it took me that much time for me to write a version that I was actually happy with. But there are other books that, for me, like they came more easily, right? Because they showed up fully formed as a story. So then I just had to write it down because I already knew how the characters would look. I knew where it would begin, where it would end, and so then it was much easier for me to write it. So I think it really depends on the story, and I suppose it also depends on where you are at the moment.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the answer.
Fantastic. Lovely. Satvik, I hope that answered your question. And one thing, Shalini, I'm so happy today because when I write my plays, some plays take me around 3 to 6 months, while some plays take at least 2, 3, 4 years to complete. And sometimes I question myself, oh my God, am I too slow at writing? But it's all about how that idea germinates and how you are convinced as a writer to come up with that final product of yours. Let's move on to the next question. Let me move on to Samyukta, who's been waiting here to ask her first question. Over to you, Samyukta.
Thank you, sir. I would like to direct my question to Sudha ma'am. And it is that we see that many schools in India do not give much importance to reading books. But whereas in foreign countries, we see that they are given a lot of importance. And how do you think we can solve this issue, ma'am?
Your good name?
Samyukta.
Samyukta, you have asked a very fantastic question. And it is a sad state in India that the schools don't promote reading. Okay. I will tell you that in our school, we do promote reading a lot right from first standard, where the children are told stories. We inculcate an interest, okay, by telling them stories and showing them the picture books. By the time they go to grade 2, grade 3, we start giving them books first to experience the touch of the book, see the pictures, and so on. Then we have so many competitions for them. We tell them about the importance of reading and talk about a lot of people who have read books and achieved something in life. So it is not only the teachers or librarians, but we feel that even the parents should also help the children to read. Okay, because at home, if they start first, the school then carries forward and it becomes very easy. And I would also like to tell you now that I think CBSE schools at the moment, they are trying to put reading as a very important part of their studies. So I hope and I'm visualizing that very soon the schools will change in India and promote reading more for children.
Thank you, ma'am.
Wonderful. That was a really lovely question that was asked by Samyukta and very rightfully answered. And it is a big practical issue happening in our country where we are looking at, can we have the spotlight changed? Because I guess after the question, the spotlight, yeah, thank you so much. If there are educationalists listening to us, it's a very important thing that needs to be done across all of the schools in India, where reading can be made such a beautiful habit in children. And if we can create inspiring spaces around the school for children to read and inspiring opportunities for them to explore reading, discuss about what they have read, and also share or even become writers themselves. So this could promote a lot of reading and writing among children, which could look at the future of literature improving in a great way. There is somebody who's asking us a question. Okay, they've just asked, can I ask a question? Dear audience, you're welcome to ask a question at any point of time. Please do type your questions in the chat box and I will take it up with the panelists as we go through the process. We are now at 5:28. We will wrap this session up sharp at 6 o'clock. We do have a lot of time. So dear audience who are there listening to us, if you have any questions to ask, please do type them on the YouTube chat box and I shall take it forward with them. I move on to our next young panelist over here. Let me come to Sahas. Over to you, Sahas, for your first question. Go ahead, please.
Hello. My first question would be to Sudha ma'am. Difference in education in abroad and India.
Can you just repeat your question? Difference in education?
The difference in abroad and India. Like, is there any difference?
Yeah, definitely. You see, there is difference between education abroad and India, right from kindergarten to the graduation level. So you would also appreciate the point that because of this, the first thing starts itself, the classroom, number of students in the classroom. Abroad, if you see, the number of children are very, you can say about 20 in each class. Whereas in India, each section will have about 35 students. So it starts right from there. Second, the way teaching goes abroad and the way the teaching is in India, there's a lot of difference. There, I feel, this is my personal opinion, that there is a curiosity developed in children in whatever they teach. They are made to think hard and they need to explore a lot of things on their own, do research and come back. Whereas in India, our way of teaching is different in the sense we teach them a lesson, we give them the question answers. The exploration part by the student is very minimal. But I believe that today things are changing in India too, where now the examination is taking in examinations are being given in a different way, and children are made to think as to why this is happening or what it is. So I think even education in India is changing a lot. And partly because of that, I also feel that reading in India is less because children just stick to their books. They read and they write the exams. Whereas abroad, they are made to do a little more research on the topic and come out with something new to what has been given by the teacher. Does that satisfy you? Does that answer satisfy? Sahas?
Yes, ma'am, it satisfies.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that wonderful question and answer. That brings us to the thought of the current NEP policy that is being brought in by the government, the National Education Policy 2020, which has wonderfully mapped education to knowledge and not just education to marks. So which means going ahead, as Sudha was just mentioning, the Indian schools are also going to be imbibing into the philosophy of experiential learning, which is going to get children to do a lot of reference, a lot of reading, which in turn is also connected to our today's topic of reading literature. So as reading develops as a habit, I'm sure their hands being laid on literature books is bound to increase. Let's go to our next young participant who's been waiting quite patiently for his first question. Advai Vikram, over to you, please.
So, I want to ask this question to Shali ma'am. Are there any Indian children literature novels or authors that have inspired you?
Okay, thank you. Lovely question. Lots, actually, is the answer. I think one of the first books that I really, really loved as a child and read, I reread it till my book was in tatters, was a book by a cartoonist called Shankar. I don't know if you've encountered him, but he has this really beautiful book called Life with Grandfather, which I had a copy of it as a child and I loved it. And I continue to, I mean, my copy, I think, tore about 10 years ago, but I still remember it very vividly. And I think one of the things I really liked about it that I often try to do in my own books is that he created this very sort of, he gave you this sense of a place, right? This home, the people in it, the landscape, the trees there, the well there, how the grandfather worked, right? So it was I mean, in that sense, it gave you a feeling for this specific home very beautifully, right? So that's one of the books I really love. Anushka Ravishankar is another writer I really like. She writes children's. I don't know if any of you has read her, but if you haven't, you should, because she writes what's called nonsense verse, right? So it rhymes and it has beautiful illustrations, and they're also very clever and they're very funny. I tend to like funny books, so she's someone I think whose work I found very influential. Who else? Lots of people. I used to read this historical books as well. I used to read a lot of Amar Chitra Katha as a child. So I like history. I like mythology. I really like folk tales. So yeah, so quite a lot, I think, is the short answer.
Wow. Thank you so much at that, because always we're curious to know what somebody has done, what somebody has read, who's influenced whom. And really nice to see, many Indian works have inspired you, Shalini, and have got you to read and be a writer today who you are. Moving on, we'll go to the second round of questions now. Let me now come back to Ananya for her second question, please.
Do you find something unique about Indian children's literature? If there is, what is it?
Who are you directing this question to, please?
Sudha.
Okay, yeah. Let me tell you one small thing. In our school, I don't know if you all know, we had a student, Yamini Prashant, and she has written books. She has written about 4 books. And all of these books are very popular, not only with our children, but even outside. If you do get a chance to read, you read. She wrote her first book when she was in grade 5. Okay. What is the unique thing in what she wrote is the language. So language was very simple. Second, we all could relate to what she has written because they all were real life experiences put in a nice story form. Every one of you all, when you read her books, you will find that you yourself are that character, and you will feel a sense of connection with the character. So Indian authors, I feel those who are able to connect with our environment, our situations, and write for the children, I like those type of authors.
Thank you, ma'am.
Right. Thank you so much on that. Ananya, just extending the answer to you there, the uniqueness that you find in any of the country's works, which is what we were talking. If you had focused on the, or heard my opening statement where I said literature is a piece of work which is captured over sands of time, which contributes towards the culture, the civilization, the people, the nativity, the practices. There are so many things that are brought in there. So actually, when you read books written by Indian authors targeting Indian segment, or if their works are influenced by a region in India, you would find you will be able to understand a lot of uniqueness of that particular place, which also Shalini answered in the beginning when she said, if I would read a book written by somebody in Kashmir, she was mentioning that where she said, it is a whole new world that opens in front of you, because the kind of words that they use, the costumes they wear, the food they eat, the kind of houses they dwell in. So there's a lot of uniqueness that you find in each of these writers when you come forward. So fantastic. Let's move on to our next young panelist for his second question. Yajur, over to you, please.
Thank you, sir. I am directing this question to Sudha ma'am, and question is, why is children's literature important in daily life and in a child's development?
Just repeat it. Your voice is not clear.
Why is children's literature important in daily life and in a child's development?
Right. Children's literature, as such, reading books, like we all know, are very important for a child, because we all know it improves your language skills, it improves your thought process, it makes you think, it creates an imagination in you. And when you read books across the world, not only Indian literature, but abroad also, foreign books, it develops a sense of creativity in you. You start thinking, you start analyzing things, your approach to life will be very different. It may ignite in you a sort of, should I say, if you read, like Sir said, if you read a book written which describes Kashmir, right? You may think of going there. So maybe you may think of becoming a traveler who loves traveling, may gain a lot of knowledge about places. So I feel that children's literature is very, very important. If you read a biography, say, for example, you read Sunita Williams, right? You know that she was an astronaut and she went in space. Some of y'all may be wanting to become an astronaut tomorrow. So it ignites in you a hidden passion or a hidden thing. So I feel that children reading books is very, very important in not only developing their personality, but also making them think and arouse a curiosity in whatever they read and spread that knowledge. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Can I just add just a quick comment here, which is, I mean, I think Sudha ma'am is right, but I'm also just going to say that reading books is a very joyful experience. So if for no other reason, do it because it gives you happiness.
I would also like to add a small thing. I think authors and librarians and teachers, yeah, reading is a joyful thing. but like one of the students said, that the status in school is very low. It's also because I feel parents at times, they do not encourage reading because they feel that children should go and play outdoor. So playing for them physically is more important than reading books, sitting in a place and not doing any physical activity.
Right. Thank you. So that question is triggering a lot of answers over there. Whereas, I would contradict and say that, dear parents, if there can be a balance between physical work and reading, it can bring in a wholesome development. Now, this triggers a very interesting question from one of our audience on the YouTube. She is directing this question to Shalini. She says, I am Sahitra. My question is to Shalini ma'am. The changing trend in reading with digital or electronic gadgets, is it affecting the relationship of humans with books? I guess a leaf out of our previous discussion now. The question is dropped in here. Over to you, Shalini.
I don't think I have an actual answer to this because we've only been reading digitally at this point for, I think, 10 years? I'm not sure how long e-readers have been around, maybe 10 years. Human beings have been reading physical books or book type things for centuries before that. So, I don't think we can tell yet what difference it makes. But I will say personally, I think one difference it's made is that I actually read more because I sort of carry a lot of books with me wherever I go, right? Earlier, if I was going somewhere, I would carefully choose 2 books to take on a trip with me. Now I'll just bring 200 books with me wherever I go. So I actually end up reading more. But I do think we read differently because I think it's you read differently when you have one physical book and you have to make it last. I think it's different from when you suddenly just have access to any number of books and you can just read them whenever you want. I think there's something different there, but I'm not sure what.
Yeah, sure.
I would also like to add on what Shalini has said. That is a physical book and having a digital format. There's a lot of difference. And digital, you can just carry with yourself, say Kindle. Okay. For example, Kindle, you can just carry it with you easily and read whenever, wherever you want, and how many ever books you want. But let me tell you, there is nothing like reading a physical book, holding the book and enjoying the book on your bed.
Right, there we have 2 people, one writer and a librarian who's very passionate about the physical books, a writer who says, I read 1 book, now I read 200 books. I guess we're still evolving into the digital books, as Shalini rightly said. It's just been around 10 years now that we're coming into the digital world of books, but I'm sure both of them have their plus and minus as it goes through. But me being me, I would any day prefer a physical book in my hand because the touch and feel of that physical book is something that cannot be replaced by this digital gadget. But opinions could differ. This is just my opinion. Might be I come from, I'm not a millennium kid, so not that too savvy a digital person. So we have lived with books, so we still relish having books on hand, but there are the advantages and disadvantages with both. And I guess the best thing about human beings is to adapt with time and keep moving forward. And that is what keeps us up and running and keeps us updated. Now we move on to our next young participant to ask a question. I go on to Satvik Santosh for his question, please.
Yes, sir. So I want to direct this question to Sudha ma'am. What type of kids literature do kids most prefer when you're recommending a book to them?
This is a very, should I say, a very difficult and a tricky answer. Books, it depends on the child. Whatever do you want to read? What is your interest? Let me ask you. What is your interest of reading?
Yeah, so I normally read like books which are related to science, and I also read fantasy non-fiction books. Like I read a variety of books. That's the thing.
Okay, name one. Which is your favorite? Which genre is favorite? Science fiction or
Yeah,
fantasy?
it would be fantasy because I feel like it like makes you go into a different world and makes you feel like it makes you think differently, you know.
Okay. Ananya, can I ask you your interest? What type of books do you like reading? Which is your favorite genre or which section? Fantasy, biographies, adventures, which do you like?
Ma'am,
Most,
fantasy and non-fiction, ma'am.
okay, non-fiction, you like biographies?
Yes, ma'am. I am right.
Okay, Sahas, you can see that she likes biographies and you like fantasy, right? So two different
Yes.
children, maybe, sorry, not Sahas, sorry, Satvik. Uh, sorry, Satvik, yeah. So two different children having two different answers. I think more or less you both may be of the same age, right? But two different interests. So no two children are same, right? Everybody has different interest and everybody likes to read different types of book. So it basically depends on your interest and what do you want to read. But yes, as librarian, at times we do promote few books which we think are very important for the children for them to read and know about it. They may have skipped reading that, or it may have not caught their eyes. So, for example, you are interested in fantasy, but there may be a biography, okay, of Sachin Tendulkar or a cricketer which we think can influence your life also. So, no two children are same, no two interests in reading books are same. But at the same time, I would say reading books of all kinds will help you develop your personality.
Thank you for the answer.
Thank you so much. And that was wonderful. A quick time check. We have 11 minutes to go in this panel discussion. The discussion is actually heating up now. You know, wonderful questions coming up, a lot of thoughts pouring in. We have our audience posting in their questions. So I go for one audience question now. This is asked by Mahalakshmi Balaji herself. Okay, she's posted a question directing it to Shalini, where she asked, why are regional children's literature not translated and made into English?
I don't actually have an answer to this because I think to some extent this is true for regional adult literature as well, right? Which is, I mean, in India, each language has its own literary culture, right? It has this whole books for adults, for children, readerships, everything. And for some reason, possibly because of volume, very few of these actually make the crossover into English. But there are some children's publishers who specifically work with translations and who work with different languages. So one of my favorite publishers is Tulika, who does multilingual books, right? So if you begin the book from the side, it'll be in Tamil. If you begin it from the side, it'll be in Kannada. So those are beautiful. Pratham books. I don't know if you guys have seen them, but I've written several books for them. They do this thing where they put their books up. They put their books up on their website, and anyone can translate them. Some of them are officially translated. So when I write it in English, the moment I finish writing it, it will go out to be translated, right? So when it's published, it will come out. Usually, it will come out in at least 4 languages. So it'll be in English, it'll be in Hindi, it'll be in Tamil, it'll be in Kannada. And since it's up on their website, lots of other people start translating it. So I think one of the things that makes me really happy with when I write a book for Pratham is that I come back 6 months later and I find that suddenly there's a Chinese version of my story, there's an Indonesian version of my story. right? So I think a lot of publishers are now trying to translate works. They're trying to take stories from one language and make them available to other people, but it's a very slow process. Translation is hard. Translation is very hard, and translating children's books in a way is actually, it's really tough, because you have to sort of maintain the spirit of one language and convey it well in something else. So, but people try. It's
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to agree with you that translation is very tough. And not only that, I also feel translating in English, you don't get the right type of words, or the
Yeah.
way it is described in the native language. You don't get the right sentences, right words, right environment to project it in the English books. And also, I think translated books are not promoted as much as the other kind of books. And like you rightly said, Tulika Publishing is doing a wonderful work. Pratham Books, all these people are making an effort, and I hope that the regional language books do come up for reading by children.
Right. Thank you so much, both of you. Very interesting question that was. And I guess we can have a debate on that itself for a long time. Time is a constraint. We move on to the next question. So let me come up to Samyukta for her next question, please.
Thank you, sir. I would like to direct my next question to Shalini ma'am. How do you think children's literature will impact their future?
Okay, that's a very big question. The short answer is I don't know. But the longer answer is that I think reading is, I obviously I'm going to say this because I spend a lot of my time reading and writing, but I think reading is important. I think it's a way for us to get to know other people. It's a way for us to, you put yourself in the place of someone, of different people. Right. And so a lot of those people are very different from you. They aren't anything like you. They don't think like you. They speak a different language. They come from a different part of the country or a different part of the world. They might even just come from a different part of your city. Right. But they're still living, you're still putting yourself in someone else's place. You're trying to feel what they feel, think how they think. And I think that's an important thing to be able to do. I think for all of us in our everyday life, how you relate to someone is if you're able to sympathize with them, if you're able to see how they think. So I think just from that point of view, I think being able to read is an important thing to learn.
Thank you, ma'am.
Right, lovely. So that was pretty interesting to note. We move on to our next contestant, or rather say panelist, for his next question to us. Let me move on to Advay Vikram for your next question, please.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to direct this to Shani, ma'am. What aspects of Indian literature can be better? Are any of them better than the foreign types, or and are there some which can be improved upon the foreign types?
I think it's. This is a very hard question for me because I tend to not think of books in terms of better. Mostly because, as Sudha ma'am points out, right, we all look for different things in our books, right? Like I think a couple of other people, Ananya and Sahas, I like fantasy, right? I like reading fantasy. But I like my fantasy also to be different, right? So if you read a fantasy written by someone in Europe, it tends to have ideas that are very European, right? So you'll have fairies or you'll have mermaids. If you read a fantasy written by someone from India, you might have rakshasas or you might have yalis, right? And I think and I don't think it's easy to say that this is better than this. They're both drawing on different kinds of stories, and I And depending on what you prefer, that works better for you. What do you like to read?
I like to read more of history books and science comedy.
Sorry, say that. Could you say that again?
A little bit of history and a little bit of comedy.
Yeah, so you'll find really good historical fiction in India. You'll find also, but you'll also find really good historical fiction written by people in other parts of the world. So yeah, so I think for me it's very hard to say that specifically that this is better than this. So
yeah, I would like to add on to what you said. Yeah, like as Shalini ma'am has said, it's very important that everybody has a different interest. But apart from the story or the content, I feel some things are catchy for children in the sense the illustrations, the pages, the quality of the pages, the font size, the pictures you add on that. I think all these also play a very important role in a child selecting a book to read. What catches your eyes is very important apart from the content. And like she says, it's very difficult to say this is good or that is good. It depends on the individual interest. But overall, books are books, and you should read all books. There's no difference in that. Yeah.
Wow, that was really interesting from both the panelists, and this also answers the question of one of our audience. Saujanya Goda has posted a question on behalf of Reni. What is the difference between Indian books and foreign books, directed to Shalini? But I guess, Saujanya, your question has already been answered. We've had a wonderful discussion on that topic in this previous question over here, as to what is the difference, and some spec differences and some differences in terms of the vocabulary and the influences being used. We will be running out of time. We have 2 minutes more to wrap up this discussion. So I go for the last question from Sahas. Over to you, Sahas.
Does the difference in education affect the exposure to literature?
Who are you directing
this question is directed to Shalini, ma'am.
Yes, I think that's a very clear yes, right? Which is, I think, and of course, a big part of your education is, if anyone's education is, what kind of books you have exposure to, right? Do you have access to school libraries? School libraries are so important. You have access to books somewhere else, right? Do you see a lot of books? Do you have time to read a lot? And I think like a lot of other things in India, it is a privilege if you're someone who has access to a good school library, if you have lots of books, if you have the time to read it. It is a privilege, and I think it makes a huge difference to how you just your ability to sit down, read a book, find yourself traveling to somewhere else in your mind. I think it's a, if you can do it, I think it's a lovely thing to.
Yeah, and I feel very proud to say that our school library has a collection of almost like 25,000 odd books of all Indian as well as foreign written books, and children really love coming to our library. It's quite spacious, unlike many school libraries which have small place in terms of sitting and all that. So I really feel proud about our school library, and children do get a nice atmosphere to read books. But I also feel that nowadays, even this is changing in most other schools. And yeah, I hope that all children do get to read books in their school and enjoy reading.
Right. So that's a really fantastic. We've had an hour-long discussion on children's literature in India versus children's literature across the globe. We had two wonderful guest panelists, Shalini and Sudha, with us, and some young children asking fabulous questions. I was personally zapped by the questions, some of the questions that they asked, and that triggered a wonderful discussion forward. So we find that children's literature in India currently is picking up its pace. Also, we could attribute to the fact that if people were to ask why children's literature in India was not having a popular scene as much as it was across the globe, because every writer writes from the influence of their life around them and what they think and what they have experienced. For so many odd years, we were under slavery. We came out of that and we were building a nation. So most of our writers were focusing their writing around what was happening in the country, their experiences, their influences, their thought processes, and the evolution. And I guess, as we were pointed out through the discussion here, a lot of young writers today are coming up, some young, some senior writers who have started focusing their works on children's literature, which means India has evolved as a country. And today we are thinking beyond caste, we are thinking beyond discrimination, we are thinking beyond society barriers. We are beginning to think of fantasy, of fiction, of various other things which sets the mood of the country in a beautiful way ahead. I would like now to move on to the gallery view so that people on the YouTube can see all of us together. I hope we are all being seen together over here. Fantastic discussion over here at the Read On Children's Literature Festival 2021 Season 2. So I will go in for a closing remark from Shalini first, to be followed by Sudha. Over to you, Shalini, for your closing remark. We don't have to spotlight. We can be on gallery. I'm just going to move it to gallery.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you all to the panelists, to the students particularly. Thank you very much for your questions. I really had to think about some of those because there isn't a clear answer, I think, but thank you.
I guess in most of the subjects such as literature, as we were repeatedly also pointing out that it is each person's interest on what you want to pick up and read. Yeah. And I'm sure it's the same with the answers, you know.
Yeah, pretty much.
We can't have one standard answer over there. I come to Sudha for her closing remarks, please.
Yeah, so thank you, children, for asking such lovely questions, interesting questions, which I think I also was thinking what to answer you all. But do remember that keep reading. Everybody's interest is different. Everybody, what they like to read is also different. But yes, keep reading and keep growing. Knowledge will increase when you read. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, panelists, for your wonderful time. And thank you so much, lovely children, for participating in this very purposeful and productive discussion, which I'm sure is being watched by many people on YouTube. And because it is on YouTube, you also have the facility of people watching it at a non-linear time, you know, so at their convenience. And I'm sure this should open up or inspire the minds of many, many young children over there. I also take this opportunity to thank Mahalakshmi Balaji for coordinating this panel discussion so beautifully for us, bringing in the panelists and getting the children ready for this panel discussion. And also Swati for spending her time to read out the wonderful intros of both our panelists. So dear audience who are watching us on YouTube, thank you so much for watching us live, spending some time, listening to us talk, and taking this to your children and to many more children around you, which is going to be a big game changer. So thank you so much from all of us. But before we leave, we will be back in a few minutes from now at 6:30. We have Read On Children's Festival Season 2 monologue presentation by 18 young performers raring to go with different monologues. We will be live on the same YouTube channel. And we have a special performance today by Miss Akshara, who's a Carnatic musician and a beatboxer. So that's a very diverse combination, isn't it? So stay tuned with us. 6:30, Alchemy Kids Theatre and Youth Theatre will be back with its Read On Children's Festival Season 2 next event shortly. Bye. Take care.